Hi everyone, and today in this video I'm going to be explaining the difference between Tourettic OCD and Classic OCD. So I'm going to first start by explaining Classic OCD. Classic OCD is a condition where you experience intrusive thoughts and anxiety that trigger compulsions, such as rituals and counting and stuff like that. There is such thing as pure O as well, which is common in people with Tourette's, which is just the obsessions and intrusive thoughts, which can obviously be very terrifying because they can involve some very scary things. However, Tourettic OCD is slightly different. Tourettic OCD is a little bit rarer than Classic OCD and pure O, even in the Tourette's community. However, I know that it is important to make the distinction because the treatment options are actually different, and I think it is important to know because you want to find the most effective treatment. So Tourettic OCD is where, rather than the rituals and compulsions being triggered by an intrusive thought or anxiety, they are actually triggered by a premonitory urge, which is a physical sensation. This is why for Tourettic OCD, CBT is not effective and can actually make things worse due to the suppression and redirection. However, for Classic OCD and pure O, CBT can sometimes be very, very helpful. I think that with Tourettic OCD, for me personally, the most effective treatments were medication, and also I use alternative treatments now. So I'm off my antipsychotics and I treat it naturally through diet by cutting out my triggers that trigger sort of an allergic reaction that triggers inflammation in the brain. Because what's really interesting is information has been found in the brains of people with OCD, and also people with Tourette syndrome have been found to have higher levels of inflammatory cytokines, which is really interesting, and I do think that warrants more research into that area. But with Tourettic OCD, it can actually be just as debilitating as Classic OCD. For example, with my Tourettic OCD, it took me hours to use the bathroom because I would spend hours washing and drying my hands. I would not be able to dress myself because the ritual was so long, so my parents had to do it for me because it got to the point where it was actually impossible. I had lots of different rituals that I always let my dinner go cold because I didn't have time to eat it because I was constantly doing the rituals. I was straightening my shoes in the hallway for about between 1 hour and 2 hours, and it was just absolutely awful. And as well as this, I did have some very strange compulsions where it looked like I was taking off an invisible sock, and I would try and eat sweets and foods and stuff with the wrappers still on. And as I said, what makes it different from Classic OCD is I never actually experienced the intrusive thoughts. The intrusive thoughts and anxiety didn't trigger the rituals and compulsions. What triggered them was sensations. And if you saw, I think, one of my last videos, I made a video on phantom tics. This is actually what triggered my rituals. So before a ritual, I actually felt an out-of-body sensation that attached to an object, like a door or something, and that's how I knew I had to do the ritual with it. And these sensations felt like it was enveloping the objects and stuff, and it wouldn't be released until I did the ritual, which I obviously couldn't suppress or anything because it was so uncomfortable, and that's why CBT didn't work. And there was a point where I was having CBT for, my Tourettic OCD, but they didn't know it's Tourettic OCD at that point. But then they did say that this might not be like Classic OCD because it's slightly different, and they noticed that, and that's why CBT wasn't really that effective and actually triggered more rage attacks because the phantom tics and out-of-body sensations was stressing me out so much. But if you have Classic OCD, which is actually quite common in the Tourette community, I think it's actually more common than Tourettic OCD because Tourettic OCD is quite rare, but people with Classic OCD and pure O find a lot of help with CBT. I do think more awareness is needed of Tourettic OCD though, because I was once told by someone that I must have just been not trying hard enough at the CBT, and that's not true because I never had the intrusive thoughts, so there's really nothing to work on. Because I remember my psychologist asking me, what do you think is going to happen if you don't do this? And I tried to explain that nothing would happen, I just get a really bad sensation that makes me feel sick. And they said, oh okay, so you'll feel sick. But they didn't really understand it, because out-of-body sensations aren't really that well documented, and phantom tics, if you search it, there's only 3 results on Google, so it must be either quite rare or I don't think it's either rare or I don't think people speak about it that much. I'm not too sure. And I remember when I was younger, we didn't know it was Tourettic OCD when I was younger because the vocabulary I used when I was younger to describe it was sticky magic, and I explained how this sticky magic was sticking to things, and it was like this translucent or transparent thing that I couldn't see it, but I could sense it from the other side of the room, and it would come out my hands and I'd feel it and it'd touch the object and pull me towards it like an elastic band. And this is why my rituals are so severe, and I also had to be dragged out the bathroom kicking and screaming because I had to finish my ritual, and I didn't usually get to sleep till about 3 a.m, so I was really sleep deprived, but then I think that worsened the situation, and it got to the point where my parents had to use like this natural homeopathic remedy thing to try and get me to sleep. We're not actually sure if it worked or whether it was me like literally passing out due to exhaustion, but I did eventually get to sleep. It was very difficult though, of course. But I had so many rituals, like I don't even know how many. Pretty much everything I did I had to do a ritual. Like I would flick the light switches, I would straighten my shoes, straighten pencils, I would click things like fabrics, I would click them. And obviously I was severely disabled by it, and I couldn't even walk up the stairs because I had this really complex ritual where I would try and scrape my feet on the back of this sort of marble thing, and then I would run as fast as I can across the living room and jump over this invisible barrier that I felt there. I know it wasn't there and I couldn't see it, but I physically couldn't pass it because it was a phantom tic. So I had to jump over it, and it got to the point where I couldn't actually walk up the stairs on my own, so I had to be carried up the stairs for many years, and that was really, really awful. But yeah, Tourettic OCD can be really debilitating, but so is Classic OCD and Pure O. Classic OCD is debilitating, and Classic OCD and OCD in general is actually, I think at one point it was ranked as one of the most disabling conditions. I'm not sure if it still is, but I think actually it definitely is one of the most debilitating conditions, because if you have Classic OCD, obviously you've got the rituals, but you've also got the intrusive thoughts and anxiety. And I haven't personally experienced intrusive thoughts. I've experienced mental tics, but I class mental tics as something that's a bit different, because with the mental tics, they're not like, I'm not imagining like the unthinkable or like horrific things. It's just with my mental tics, it's scary because I feel like I'm trapped in my mind. So I think it's a slightly different thing. But I've had friends who've had intrusive thoughts and stuff, and it's obviously very scary because you literally think the unthinkable, you think what you shouldn't think, and it can be absolutely really, really terrifying. And Pure O is the same. That's why Pure O is so terrifying as well. I hope this video has helped with the clarification of the difference between Classic OCD and Tourettic OCD. I don't think many people really know the difference, because in the UK, the diagnosis of Tourettic OCD doesn't actually exist. They'll usually diagnose you just with OCD, and that's why I had to have CBT. That didn't actually work, unfortunately. But I just don't think it's recognised in the UK. However, I know in the USA it is recognised, because there's a website which I'll try and link down below from the Behavioural Therapy Centre of Washington, I think it is, where they discuss it. So I think it is really important to make the distinction, because the treatments are different. Classic OCD can be treated with CBT and antidepressants like SSRI medications. And Tourettic OCD can be treated with antipsychotics, and sometimes you can also take SSRIs as well, which can help, and also other methods such as like the natural methods that I use, like dietary treatment, that reduces inflammation in the brain, because as I said, inflammation is found in the brain of people with OCD and people with Tourette's as well. So I hope this video has helped, and I hope you know the clarification now. If you have any questions, please ask them down below. Bye!